Okay, sir.
Yeah, welcome to our brainstorming session. I'm online with Ebenezer Matayo and Dennis Emihe. Though he's having some internet problem, but he will be joining up. We shall be discussing why dentures, removable appliance, lose their retentive power, why they are not retentive in the mouth of patient after fabrication. We're going to be identifying the newly fabricated dentures. We're not going to be talking about dentures that have been made and the patient has used over time. So the journey of a denture begins with impression taken in the clinic. And the clinician does this. The clinician could be a dentist. It could be a clinical dental technologist. When impression is taken, you know that we have stock tray, we have silicone, rubber-based impression material, we have compo, we have alginate. The most popular is alginate that is used commonly in the clinic. And then the handling of the stock tray, the handling of the impression, mixing it with water, goes a long way to determining how accurate impression is taken. And the accuracy of impression will go a long way also to determine the eventual fitness of the denture that is made.
Yes, I agree with you, sir. I'm so glad to be in this interactive session. And definitely, like you said, the production or fabrication of any denture in the laboratory by a dental laboratory technologist relies solely on the perfection of the clinician. That's during the impression taking. And of course, it so much depends on the various types of impression materials used in the clinic to obtain the negative likeness of the patient's mouth, of which that is being used to obtain the positive likeness of the patient's mouth, which is supposed to be offered the denture. And so I think, like you said, the chunk of the problems dentures might encounter is definitely from the starting point, which is the clinic, and that's in the impression taking.
You agree with me that definitely,
Yeah.
if the clinician is not careful, we have seen cases where a newly made denture eventually didn't fit. And see, we always have this scenario where the clinician will pass the blame to the lab, while the lab also passes the blame to the clinic. We know that alginate, or let me say different impression materials, have their own special qualities. Alginate, for example, it's very easy for alginate to spring out of undercut in a situation where you are dealing with a partially dented mouth. But if the choice of the clinician is wrong as to using maybe compo or using silicone in a partial case, or in a case that is not very suitable, definitely the eventual impression that will come out of that exercise is likely going to be fraught with errors. So the clinician has to be very careful to ensure that he makes the right choice of, one, the impression, he makes the right choice of, two, the stray. And again, he carefully makes sure the impression is taken. Then if you look at it now, the impression now goes, let's assume it's okay, because if it is wrong at this stage, the fit will be compromised eventually. So many other errors that will arise as well. But if eventually, the impression is taken, it will move to the lab. Now, it depends so much about how it moves again with the dental nurse.
Yeah. Yes, like you said, of course, the major problem we can perhaps encounter is from the way and manner in which the impression is being taken, and the specific type of impression material used for the specific case in question. I had observed over the time, over my period of practice in the laboratory, I've noticed that there are two basic things clinicians don't are very, very careless about, and they need to take and probably begin to handle meticulously. And that's the way they bring out the impression from the patient's mouth. That is the way they pull out the tray from the patient's mouth to avoid a drag, which can alter the anatomical features in the patient's mouth. And of course, they also need to put in consideration bilateral undercuts. That's when you have undercuts on both quadrants, withdraw the impression that you wouldn't have a tear or probably a drag. That's in the course of the tray trying to come out of an undercut area on one side of the contract of quadrant, and at the same time wanting to pull out itself on the other side of the quadrant. So those two things precisely are things clinicians should put into consideration. And of course, over time, I've discovered that the use of expired impression materials originate precisely. There are some of them that when eventually they've expired, they don't give that smooth surface appearance such that the anatomical features can be smoothly um, reproduced. When they perhaps might have expired, they have this quartz look on setting. So that quartz look of an already set alternate material cannot give a smooth feature of the oral cavity. So those are things I want to believe clinicians should take note of to avoid errors in the dental laboratory. And of course, like you said, another error that we might encounter could be during the transfer of the impression tray to the laboratory by the dental nurses. Well, like we all know, originate, for instance, can stay for about 72 hours without losing its sham form. That's it doesn't imbibe water, it doesn't undergo imbibition or syneresis under 72 hours. So if the dental nurse refuses to send forth an impression that has been taken in the clinic for any moment beyond 72 hours, of which it's supposed to last, then there should be um, automatically laboratory errors in the fabrication of such a denture. So I think dental nurses should be very mindful of that, and of course learn to put over the impression the dental napkin, a wet dental napkin to avoid impurities from entering the impression, and of course imbibition of moisture from the surrounding environment, and several other things, several other reasons why that has to be done by the dental nurses to
Fantastic.
avoid
Fantastic.
failures.
Fantastic. I agree with you. I think one important thing you mentioned now,
Thank you, sir.
yes, which I have not really, which I didn't look at, was the way the impression, when it's set, is taken from the mouth of the patient. One should avoid dragging, like you said. There shouldn't be any kind of dragging at all. When there's dragging, it's going to alter all the details that may have been registered. Yes, dragging should be avoided. Dragging also could cause the impression to tear. And if tearing occurs at sensitive points, it is most likely going to cause distortion. You know, the foundation of any denture that is made is in the impression. Therefore, when we're talking about the
Yeah.
fit, how a denture retains its fitness and it doesn't lose its fitness, that this discussion is very important. Now, again, you added dental napkin, and that dental napkin adding preventing the infection from problem of imbibition and syneresis. Of course, this does not apply to silicone material, but originate. Yes, that is true. Wet dental napkin helps a lot to keep and to preserve the impression if it's not going to be cast immediately. That is a very high point that I've made. In addition to that, you also agree with me. You agree with me that apart from preserving the impression from this, from inhibition analysis, it's also very important that we sort of the nurse is supposed to know and be careful not to allow uh, the impression get distorted because of handling. For example, if a full upper arch impression is taken, for example, you know that there will be excess flow of the originate from the frame. And when it does happen, it means the peripheral area of that impression has to be carefully handled. For example, when a tray, an impression is taken to the lab, you avoid the posterior border resting on the top of the bench in order to avoid distortion. This, in some setting, has to be an important note for dental nurses, even for dental technologists, because yes, dental nurses take this to the lab and it becomes the responsibility of the dental technologists. But definitely, sometimes there are situations where the dental nurses may have to be well informed on probable distortion that will occur if it is not properly handled. So therefore, if they are bringing the impression in, how they position this impression so that there is no distortion, so that the periphery is not pressed, there's no pressure that's applied to it so that it causes distortion, or the posterior border not resting on the bench top. These are important notes that, of course, the nurse should also be aware and the dental technologist should take full cognizance of. I also want to add here that, yes, after all those precautions may have been taken, it is also very important that we look at how we make our stone means. We want to make the model now. We want to mix it, plaster water ratio, or let me say stone water ratio. This also play important role. Very important role. What do you think now? What do you think? What you want to add to that, Ebenezer?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The aspects of producing a study model, a model for the fabrication of denture, which is the duty of the dental laboratory technologist, is very, very much significant as to determining the success of the denture which is to be fabricated. And a dental technologist should know that you don't use plaster of Paris to cast a model for out of an impression. To pour, you don't pour with plaster of Paris mixture with water. That's because there are several setbacks which plaster of Paris has when compared to stone plaster now, which is quite harder than it. Well, of course, there are so many things that could warrant there are so many reasons why we don't use that, and this ranges from the expansion of plaster of Paris when it sets, thereby altering the features in the oral cavity. Like thereafter it sets, it expands. It expands. That's in about a certain certain millimeter, which I can really say affirmatively now. But definitely, we all know that plaster of Paris, when compared to stone plaster, expands, but stone plaster is quite stable at room temperature. Thereafter, it sets. So it's most advisable to use stone plaster to cast your impression to obtain your model. And of course, you can also use densite, which is the other one. Or basically, densite is being used to make dies. That's dies for crowns. But the most applicable one should be dental stone in pouring any impression. And of course, while mixing, one should also take note that you don't make a watery mixture, like having a ratio of 70 to 30%. That's 30% to 70% water. That wouldn't work. You have a watery mix that wouldn't produce something good for you. So you should at least have a 50-50 ratio of your stone plaster and water, and in in some to make a thick mix you have in your impression. So I think that's what I have to say about pouring your stone plaster to obtain a model.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That is true. That is true. We have an experienced people in the house. That is true. As a matter of fact, the water powder ratio, the powder now the stone, should be well balanced. Experience has shown that a thick mix is very good in order to obtain a dense model. But inexperienced technologists might think that a thick mix has to be so thick that the denture, the stone, may not flow very well. So, like you said, there has to be a balance. 50-50, powerful, 50-40, depends on experience. And again, on the model, on the type of stone that is used. It can be regular, fast setting, can be slow setting. All this has to be taken cognizance of when you are making your stone.
The model.
When you're making your model.
Okay, I guess
Dennis, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I've been following the discussion so far, and I have quite a number of things. Okay, I think in the case of obvious intention, I think the purpose of every venture has to be this has been stated already. It's definitely trying to be but this ability to people now, what about the people that this venture has been this audience has been sent to the land? And we have some impression, we have to know on the impression. Then we want to make a duplicate because sometimes we invest with the model. We invest with the model. That's why we make a duplicate.
We could hardly hear you. But go on, go on.
I said, if you want to make a duplicate,
it's better now.
Okay, so when you want to finish your because you like to make a
Well, definitely. Amatayo, can you hear him?
I can barely hear him, but I think what is trying to tell the house is about the duplication of models. That's when you need to make a master cast and a working cast. I guess that's where he's driving at. So he's trying to talk about how you handle your impression. Thereafter, you make the first cast, which perhaps might be the master cast. There is need for you to make a duplicate cast, which is the working cast. So he's trying to talk about handling the impression carefully to avoid tears while we're drawing the model. If I'm not mistaken, I guess that's where he's driving at, but I can barely hear him. I guess he's...
Yeah. You are, I think...
Can you hear me?
we have the same problem of not hearing you very well. But I'm happy that Ebenezer actually picked the points. I think those points appear to me too when you were making them. There's no doubt that a duplicate model is very important. So that you have a working model, then you have a duplicate model. This is very important. In my experience, there has always been bug passing when a denture has problem, especially the problem of denture fitting in the mouth of the patient, or not being able to insert the denture, the finished denture properly. Yeah, usually the problem we have is that if we have a duplicate model, then it is possible for the dental technologist to try his denture, finished denture on a model, and ensure that everything is proper before it is taken to the clinic. And in a situation where there is a problem of over-trimming or poor handling in the clinic, the duplicate model will be brought out to prove a point with the clinician that, look, this is what has happened. We have had cases where dentures are seriously over-trimmed. And it is called, the blame is always to the lab. And if you have a duplicate model, you will just sit on the model that you already made, and you show clearly to the clinician, look, this denture can be over-trimmed. So in that case, the dental technologies will be absorbed from any kind of blame. So, yes, you have gotten your model, everything is proper. The next thing is proper, the stage of making the denture, fabricating it, making your outline. In that situation, what can happen if you, to a technologist not outlining his denture very well? How can this cause problem of fit for the patient? For the denture eventually.
Well, it's very good to talk about something we carry out on a daily basis on a platform like this. Well, the success of every denture starts from what the technologist does with it. Thereafter, he obtains his model from the impression. To start with, the model appears to the dental technologist, and the model, if I may say, expects the dental technologist to exercise all of its manual dexterity on it. And so, exercising your manual dexterity on any model that is being presented to you or that you obtained yourself requires some certain things which you need to put to caution.
Like?
And that's number one. Thereafter, you cast your model. No matter how good you vibrate, no matter how well vibrated the impression tray was while obtaining the model, there is no doubt that you're going to have some pimples all over the surface of your model. That is, some slight bubbles of stone over the surface of your model. So there is need for a technologist to know first that you need to clean off bubbles that are not supposed to be on the model. You compare what you have on your model to what you have in your impression. Perhaps during the mixture of the alternate impression material, or whichever impression material has been used, blowholes have been incorporated within the impression. Automatically, you should know your stone will flow into those blowholes, thereby creating some sort of pimples on the surface of your model. So these are things you need to knock off before thinking of outlining your model. And of course, you look around your model, see how much of circles you have, the depth of your circles, which would of course determine the flange of your denture, which goes a long way in determining the retention and stability of whatever you have to fabricate. So you put all these things into consideration. If you don't have a perfect depth of the circles being represented on your model, then you can always reject the impression, tell them, as far as this is concerned, I think That's where the role of a dental technologist comes in when it comes to diagnosis and treatment of dental patients. You get
I don't think.
there are dentures which a dental technologist know.
Now, you said if at the time you made a denture, I mean, you made your model, you discovered that you don't have good depth of sockets.
The
Don't you
so-calls.
think it would have been, it is too late at that time? Don't you think it would have been better before you cast your impression to ascertain this, so that you are sure that you deal with all the materials before you discover you don't have enough, I mean, depth of sockets?
Yeah, that's very right, sir. That's very right, sir. It's very good you noticed that from your impression before pouring the cast. That's very important. Well, like I said, a few number of things which has to be noted and put into consideration. Knocking off the pimples, checking the anatomical features if they are well reproduced from what you saw in the impression.
Yes.
And then several other things, final anatomical features, final attachments, of course the sulcus, like I said, depth of the sulcus, and then the palate, the depth of the palate well reproduced as you have it in the impression. So you put all of that into consideration before thinking of drawing a outline design for the denture you want to fabricate.
Let me put this in. Now, for example, if you are replacing central incisor upper, for example, it is very important that the base of your model should extend to at least the distal end of the second bicuspid. So you know, the more area the base covers, the more retentive an acrylic denture will be. So at least it must get to the second bicuspid in event you are replacing central incisors upper, for example. For example, if you are also you are replacing from canine to canine, that is 6 anterior teeth now. It means your base should extend beyond second bicuspid, should go as far as to the second bicuspid, the distal end of second molar, so that you have enough coverage. And you know, a lot of factors also come into play there. The depth of the sulcus, if the of the palate. The palatal void is very important, and that also helps in retention. We will be concluding this meeting very soon because of our limits of time. But however, we can pick it from here next time, so that we'll be able to complete the process. You see, we have been able to identify those lapses that will occur that may eventually lead to a denture losing its feet after it has been fully fabricated. It's been a nice time. And I really
thank you very much.
I really appreciate everybody that came. But with the opportunity given to us, we could still continue, because I see the system have allowed us to continue, because we are not we are not 3 on the system. If we are 3 now, we cannot continue. But because we are 2 now, we can continue. I want to therefore say that if the palatal fault is very high,